before I sell the Sony A7iv Kit Lens, I thought I'd take it for one last spin around the city. This video is going to be more about breaking down my thought process while I'm out shooting than it is the lens itself, but if you clicked on this for the lens, then hopefully it gives you a good idea of the photos and footage you can catch with it. First shot of the day coming up here, I'm liking the light and shadows going on the walls opposite me here. I spot this guy entering from the left, so I just wait for him to get between the two posts, fire off a few shots while he's walking along, and I get this image right here. After that, I go ahead and drop my shutter speed just a tiny bit with the aim of getting somebody walking past in the foreground of the frame that's slightly out of focus. And this woman enters the frame from the left, scrolling on her phone, and I capture this one. On the other side of the tunnel opening, I notice this light leaking onto the entrance wall, so I get my settings to a place where there's a clear divide from left to right in terms of brightness and darkness. It's a waiting game from here. I actually ended up turning off the action cam and I almost leave the area, but eventually this guy wanders into the frame with a coffee and a suitcase. Love this shot. Definitely a place I'm going to go back to and try and get something maybe a little bit more interesting. It's been a while since I've shot in the city, but I find it's always a nice break, especially after a heavy period of outdoor and landscape photography. A session in the city always just gives you a bit of a fresh take on things. It allows you to use your eye a little bit differently and try and spot some things you might not always photograph. Here I notice somebody right in the distance heading to that beam of light on the floor, so I kind of wait for them to enter the light, then take this shot. At first I thought this was going to be a killer shot, but it's definitely too far out to have any real impact. On the road below, I managed to isolate this biker going past, which is pretty cool. Then I go on to take a few more photos of a guy hanging out up the street again, but like before, it's just a bit too far out for me. Heading back on myself now, I have to pass back through the tunnel, so I post up with a low angle using the road markings there as a nice line into the frame. Here I spot this gorgeous light hitting the side of the building and floor. I waited for gaps in traffic and clouds coming and going, taking the light away. I take this quick snap in the interim, then finally a couple of people wander along the street. I fire off a bunch of shots to make sure I get them positioned nicely, then separated the two people in post after. The only downside to these two images is that they're walking out of the frame rather than in, but sadly that's the direction foot traffic was moving at this time, so I'd say these two shots are probably like 90% there of me being really happy with them. Round the corner we started getting some really heavy shadows. This shot here of a reflection I took through a window made me laugh. The amount of that's going on in this is 1 in a million. Of course, the guy in the middle, a woman walking towards me in the window for the direction that I was shooting in, a bird flying into the bin on the left, and another guy in the distance strolling on. So at this point I decided to go head to an area where I can get some more urban style shots, mainly because it meant passing by somewhere I could grab some breakfast on the way, but let's see what we get. I annoyed myself looking back on this next shot. You'll notice on the wall there it says Newcastle on the street art, and I was clearly not concentrating because I somehow cut that off with my framing. So yeah, don't be like me, double check your framing, that's for sure. I always get lost photographing the street art and walls in this area of town. It changes so often, which to me is great when you feel like having a walk and taking some photos, but at the same time being able to practice just looking around and spotting different details here and there, which is a very underrated part of photography. Taken photos on this bridge about 1,000 times like everybody else has that's based in Newcastle, but as it's on my way back to the car park, it would be rude for me not to stop and keep aiming to improve upon those old shots. That being said, we're getting towards the end of the images I took on this morning's walk and my farewell, shall we say, to the Sony Kit Lens. It's played a vital role in me deciding my preferred focal lengths for photography. That's it from me. I'll let the last few clips run, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.